Hello, beautiful people. It is April. Today I want to share with you thriller books for feminists or feminist thrillers. Um, I don't know where this came from. I think I've just started reading books that have a bit of a feminist element to them, and I'm just eating them up. And it's really gotten me thinking about the other books on my shelves that have like a thriller horror vibe to them that also have this feminist element. Now, I will tell you that this entire thing really stemmed from one book and reading this book and just loving it. And I think it might be my favorite book of the year. Shh, pretend you didn't hear that. It might come up again at the end of the year when I'm doing my little wrap up of the whole year. I would be surprised if someone booted this out of first place. It's Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. I read one other book by Jessica Knoll, and I'm telling you, this woman has like skyrocketed. Her writing has skyrocketed. That other book, it was The Luckiest Girl Alive. It was good. It was really good. I liked it a lot. This is like, it blew that book out of the water. This is very much based on the Ted Bundy killings. He is never mentioned in this book, but we follow a sorority sister. She's the president of her sorority, and she witnesses her friend's murder, essentially, that night. Ted came into this sorority house, killed 2 girls, and brutally injured 2 other girls. Of course, you know, he also killed many women kind of across the country. Like he went to quite a few places. We also know that he escaped prison, I think twice, which is wild, and defended himself in court. And this book follows her as well as a woman who believes one of her dear, dear friends was murdered by this man and will stop at nothing to prove that he murdered her and bring him to justice. This takes place in the 70s, I think 1978. And so you are watching these women dealing with the sexism of the time and also learning about feminism. It was, I mean, not new to any extent, but it was, you know, not as prevalent as it is today. And there were very certain ways that women were supposed to act. And if you didn't act a certain way, well, maybe you deserved some of the bad things that happened to you. And our main character, Pamela, deals with this again and again and again. We're talking about an incredible student. She's president of her sorority. She just got into, what was it? Not Yale, something like that. She got into a really prominent university to become a lawyer, and she is repeatedly asked by the police if she knew what she saw. She's the only witness. She knows what she saw. She knows who she saw. She knows the timing. She's impeccable with all of the details. And yet, because she's a woman, she's repeatedly questioned. And it's so interesting repeatedly in this book, watching how women are treated versus a man who murdered multiple people and yet is a little good looking and represented himself in court. Yes, he was trying to become a lawyer, but like had terrible grades. And this book calls him out. Pamela is just, she holds nothing back. She shows repeatedly how ridiculous it is to consider him an intelligent person when he was clearly failing at life. Moreover, had murdered multiple people. And she calls this out again and again. And it really is so strange that our society has kind of, I don't know, enjoyed making him out to be something that he was not. He was just a stupid, ignorant, horrific murderer. That's what he was. And this book also repeatedly speaks to the other girls in the sorority house. I will focus on Pamela here. Like, she speaks to what some of the girls would have done with their life. Like, one of the girls who was killed was kind of an apprentice of Salvador Dali. Like, Salvador Dali, okay? And we don't focus on her life and what her life could have accomplished. Instead, we're focused on this horrible person, this horrible man. And it speaks to what all of the other girls who were affected in the sorority did with their lives and how much of a success they became. So I kind of interestingly have like two groups of books that I want to recommend. One is this kind of thing where we're speaking to the misogyny that is very, very much alive and well in our society and how women are subject to it. And then the other books I think I will start with as recommendations are books about women or girls who are just like, absolutely not. You want to do these things to my friends or to me and think you're going to get away with it? No, thank you. So we've got some kick-ass girls in these books. So I'm going to start there because I feel like a lot of you will enjoy that. And then I'll get a little more into depth with these other books that I think are just beautifully written and some of my favorite books of all time. So stick around to the end. First, I will start with a book I haven't talked about in, I don't know, a long time, and this is Dead Girls by Abigail Tartland. I think this is one of the only books she's written. She might have written two, but it's been a long time, so I'm hoping she will come out with something. This follows a girl named Tara. She is 11 years old, and her best friend, Billy, is recently found murdered. Now, this book is a thriller, but it also dips into the supernatural. Tara reaches out to Billy beyond the grave with a Ouija board, and she ends up tapping into more people than Billy. It appears that this man has killed multiple girls, and all of these girls want revenge and want justice to be served. And that all comes from Tara, who is this badass 11-year-old who just, will not stand for her best friend being murdered and nothing happening from there. She's going to bring this man down. It was fun. It was upsetting, of course, because you're talking about 11-year-old girls being killed. But this was a badass kid. And she's empowered by all sorts of ghosts. What more could you want? I really, really loved this book. Another book that I've read very recently, which is a lot of fun, one of my favorite thrillers now, is They Never Learn by Lane Fargo. This sat on my shelves for like way too long. Why did it sit on my shelves for so long? Absolutely ridiculous. This follows a woman named Dr. Clark. She works at Gorman University in the English department. And every year, she sets her sights on one man, sometimes more than one, and she kills him. But she doesn't kill just any man. She sets her sights on someone who's done something terrible. So if they have raped a woman, she'll off them. If they have like abused a woman, she will kill them. She has very specific things. But you follow her essentially selecting her next person and carrying out the deed. Now you also follow a girl going to Gorman University. She's a bit shy, a little bit awkward, but very eager to be at Gorman after years of watching her father abusing her mother. She's like done with that life and ready to start anew. And she has a roommate who is larger than life. She's in the like theater. She's, I think, majoring in theater, and she's just lovely and wonderful. And our main character, or this woman, Carly, just, kind of falls in love with her. And one night, her roommate goes out and something terrible happens, and Carly wants justice to be served. And these these two storylines kind of converge in the best of ways. Such a feminist book. You know, should you be rooting for a serial killer? Last, for this kind of thing where it's like female empowerment, I have a horror book to recommend to you, and it's my favorite horror book ever. It still is. It's been years now, and here we are, the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by my favorite horror author, Grady Hendrix. This was inspired by his own mom. Like, he said that he decided he wanted to write a story about his mom where his mom is the hero. And I think he's a similar age to me, because we've got a group of moms living in the South in the 90s. And we follow Patricia Campbell, who stumbles upon a vampire in her neighborhood. Now, she's got a group of women in her neighborhood. She's got a little friend group. They all get together every month and they read true crime books together and chat about them. Meanwhile, many of them are stay-at-home moms and are dealing with a lot of crap from husbands, expectations of what women should do. They're dealing with all of that, but they carve out this time together. And this vampire that Patricia believes is a vampire ends up joining the book club, and they somehow all have to band together and bring this vampire down. This was wonderful. It's not in your face feminist, but it is in the sense that all of the heroines are these women. No one else believes them, and they have to do this themselves, and they're just finally all sticking up for themselves after years of just being beaten down by the patriarchy. And I loved every second of this. I will tell you, there are scenes in here that are truly, truly scary. He doesn't shy away from a little bit of gore. But if you can hang through that, if you can get through it, there's so many layers to this book. That it also speaks to racism and stuff, but I just loved these heroines so much. I want to reread that at some point. So this next stack of books are going to speak to the patriarchy that we live in, the misogyny that we're all surrounded by, and women trying to deal with that. And in that sense, it is feminist because it is blatantly showcasing how we're not equal yet, guys. We haven't reached that. And this next book actually takes place in 3 different time periods. It's the Bass Rock. Is it a thriller? No, it's literary fiction, but it deals with topics that are so unsettling. Like, I didn't know that tickling could be extremely upsetting until I read this book and felt more uncomfortable than I felt in a long time. So this book follows 3 women of 3 different time periods. You follow Sarah, who's accused of being a witch. She's running for her life in the, did that happen in the 16th century or the 17th century? You also follow Ruth. It's just after World War II, and she is navigating a new marriage, and she's trying to get to know a new community. And soon after she moves to this area, she finds a dead body. You're also following Viv 6 decades later, mourning the death of her father, and she is going through Ruth's house. She lives there now, going through the house, going through her belongings, and stumbles upon some things. And yes, it just is steeped in how men have made women unsafe, and how truly scary it can be to be a woman, that I think men just don't have any idea of unless they really look into it. And it is also just absolutely beautifully written. This was my first Evie Wyld book. It will not be my last. I've got another book on my shelves by her, so highly recommend that one. And then, so I feel badly. I did start this whole thing thinking it was going to all be thrillers, but then I started just adding more and more books on the list, and I've got 2 nonfiction books to share with you. I'll start with the 5. So the 5 is surrounding women who were murdered by Jack the Ripper. And as you know, Jack the Ripper is infamous. Can you name any of the people that he killed? Me neither. And for years, everyone has just assumed that they were all prostitutes. Prostitutes should also not be murdered. But they just categorized all of these women together, even though most of them were not prostitutes. And everyone has a right to live. I don't know why we do this in our society. It's so misogynistic, interestingly enough. And this follows the 5 women, how they lived leading up to before meeting their end, meeting this man who killed them, and gives them a voice finally, and tells their own stories finally. We have this tendency in our society to focus so heavily on these murderers. And I know that there's like a reason for that to a certain extent, because they've done these terrible things. They should be infamous to a certain extent. You know, I get that. But I think often victims become re-victimized even in death by ignoring who they were. And this book, she did such intense research. It truly is a masterpiece. So I'd recommend reading that for sure. And then I'd also recommend I'll Be Gone in the Dark. This is a nonfiction true crime book, and I believe this is how all true crime should be written. Before this, I've read true crime that just re-victimizes victims and glorifies the killer, and it truly is quite disgusting. This book follows the Golden State Killer and his killings, but it time and time again holds the victim and lifts them up. That is what Michelle McNamara did. Now, Michelle McNamara died before this was released, sadly, and she did this in her spare time. She had a kid, she had a full-time job, but at night, after her child went to bed, she would look for the Golden State Killer. She never, unfortunately, knew that he was caught, but she was on the hunt for him, and she became close to some of these victims and wanted to tell their stories in a way that acknowledged them she gave them back their humanity, which can often be taken from them when things like this happen to them, and then when the media and the world gets a hold of the story. I think their humanity can be stripped from them. And this man was absolutely terrifying. He killed in the 70s and just abruptly stopped killing in the 80s. Sometimes he would kill the women and couples that he came across. He'd break into people's homes, if you don't know, put a flashlight into their eyes so they couldn't see, and then rape the women and like tie them both up and either kill them afterwards, or he'd even like stay and hang around and like eat stuff from their fridge. Like, the audacity of this man and the disgusting nature of this man knew no levels. But it tells the story of, yes, these killings, these things that he did, but the people, it shows the people and their nature. So I really loved that. And then the last book I want to recommend to you is Beneath the Skin by Nikki French. This is my favorite Nikki French that I've read. It's hard to say that, aside from the the Blue Monday series. That was absolutely wonderful as well. But Beneath the Skin follows three women, Zoe, Jennifer, and Nadia. They have absolutely nothing in common whatsoever, except that they're getting letters in the mail from someone who at first is seemingly complimentary, and then very quickly in the letters, this person is saying that they're going to kill them. You follow them trying to survive. They're doing all the right things. They're reaching out to the police, but it showcases some of the incompetencies that some police stations have, and it showcases the misogyny that they're dealing with on all levels, as well as this killer. And you're rooting for all of them, and you're getting to know their characters individually as you go. But it is truly terrifying reading this book. I was very scared reading it. Just the idea of like some sort of person watching you and having an ill intent. But it also shows the eyes of men on women, and how truly scary it can be to be a woman. So yes, that's feminist. I know that, like, I think that people can have this idea of what feminist should be as like women power, all of those things, but I think it's also really calling out the bullshit, calling out the misogyny. I think that is just as feminist. As long as there is bullshit to be called out, calling it out is feminist. So, and that doesn't seem like it's going to go away anytime soon, sadly. Sadly for me, especially after having given birth to a girl. It's really, I care about it even more now. So those are all of the feminist books, turned out to be more than thrillers, I hope you don't mind, that I would recommend to all of you. I hope that you enjoy them. Do you think that you are going to be leaning towards the books that are like more women kicking ass, or leaning more towards like really watching the misogyny out of those, you know, book groups that I showed you before? I'd love to know. And if any of them pop out to you, like what you think you're going to put on your TBR. Love to know. I'll talk with you soon. Bye.